As the DCEU expands, everybody waits with bated breath to see which heroes will get their dues on the big and small screens. But the real fans are also waiting to see which villains will be given the spotlight. So let's look at the top 10 DC villains perfect for the DCEU. At number 10 we have Felix Faust. Although he's more of a classic character that might come off a bit campy, I think he still deserves a spot on the list. One of the reasons for that is that Faust would be a perfect candidate for the DCEU to explore the world of magic that exists in the comics, considering his power set. Felix Faust is able to access certain magical powers through his demonic familiars, giving him telepathy, summoning the dead, illusions, and much more. This could offer DC a way to cash in on the interest that the public clearly has for magic powers after the success of Doctor Strange and Scarlet Witch in the Marvel Universe, although in this case the character would be a villain. And despite the fact that he looks kind of cartoonish, we've seen comic adaptations modernize, or cinemify if you will, crazier characters before. At number 9 is Prometheus. What's unique about this entry is that Prometheus doesn't actually have any superpowers, which could be a cool opportunity for DC to explore the human side of a villain, like Marvel did with Thanos, for instance, which I think worked really well. And honestly, for a human character only using armor and technology to get as powerful as Prometheus does, he would be a very interesting DCEU character to see how he gets to that point of power and how he is capable of taking on the Justice League head to head. With his super advanced computerized helmet, he's able to download knowledge such as fighting styles and much more into his mind and learn new skills immediately. And this allows the character to grow in power exponentially, which offers for a cool arc in, say, a long-running TV series perhaps. I also just think Prometheus looks so cool that he needs to be featured in a live-action setting. At number 8 is Amazo. Amazo is a classic Justice League villain, and he still holds up, other than his name. His name is a bit corny, but he was introduced back in 1960, so what else would we expect? Credited as the very first android in the world, Amazo was created by Professor Ivo, sort of like a more humanoid version of Ultron, except he's created by a villain with the intention of making him evil. He's also got a very impressive power where he can absorb the powers and skills of others in his immediate vicinity, which gives this villain a lot of potential as a serious threat in the DCEU. Maybe he'd be more of a mini-boss type villain, but I think it would make a lot of sense that he would appear in the DCEU just based on his history with the JLA and his crazy power set. At number 7 is Despero. Another classic villain, Despero first appears in 1960's Justice League of America, the self-titled comic book series. So even though Starro is known as the first villain that the JLA ever faced, Despero is the first villain in the official Justice League storyline. So now, I'm not gonna claim that Despero has the most original design. He could risk coming off as a pretty generic looking alien bad guy, but his powers are pretty impressive, with flight, telepathy, and mind control in his arsenal. He'd be like the evil, telepathic Red Hulk of the DCEU, which might actually be a cool villain for the League to be faced with in an upcoming project. At number 6 is Vandal Savage. This guy is known as an immortal caveman who has lived 50,000 years to the present day, and having taken part in many significant events in Earth's history. And honestly, I just love this backstory. I think Vandal Savage could be used to ground the DCEU in a way that it's been trying to do for a while now. With the Man of Steel, Justice League, and Suicide Squad franchises not quite hitting like the studios hoped they would, it might be time they bring in a character that has everything to do with Earth and the history of humankind. Perhaps they could weave in new villainous motivations based on his experience witnessing the evils of humanity throughout history, or maybe, I don't know, how the Earth has fallen victim to climate change at the hands of humans during his extended lifetime. I mean, he's been in support of some of the worst tyrants in the history of the world, so his connection with the human plight of evil could really bring a grounding presence to a DCEU project in a way we maybe haven't seen before. At number 5 is Grail. Daughter of Darkseid and Amazonian Marina the Black, Grail is a much more modern DC villain, and she could add a really interesting angle to the DCEU. Partly because she actually opposes her father, Darkseid, on many fronts, which adds for some cool internal conflict within the villain ranks. But mostly because she could be woven into Wonder Woman's history due to their common Amazonian heritage. I think adding a villain who is linked to such a major character as Wonder Woman was a great great idea in the comics, and if Grail makes it into the DCEU, we can not only learn more about the family history and therefore the humanity of Darkseid, but also about Wonder Woman's family history as well. At number 4 is Brainiac. This guy needed to go higher on the list just simply because he's one of the more recognizable and iconic of the DC villains. And I know what you're thinking, Brainiac is more of a Superman villain than a Justice League villain, but considering he has faced off against the Justice League as well, I think that qualifies him to some degree. And it's Brainiac. He's gotta appear in the DCEU at some point. Even Zack Snyder has admitted that he seriously considered the villain for an appearance in his Justice League film. I could personally see Brainiac playing more like an Emperor Palpatine or a Baron Harkonnen from Dune, working behind the scenes with another villain taking the forefront at first, and then during a sequel coming out and showing his true power. But that's just me. At number 3 is the Crime Syndicate of America. So is it just me, or would an evil version of the Justice League make for a pretty cool and unique antagonistic presence in a live action DC project? As much as the evil doppelganger trope might be an old one, it still hasn't been tested out on the big screen in any major way yet, at least in the last 20 years. And when Marvel brought Civil War to the movies, it worked better than anyone might have expected. And that makes me think that heroes facing off against each other in the DCEU would really resonate with people right now. And with the Crime Syndicate coming from Earth 3, it could also open the door to more interdimensional conflicts. At number 2, we have the Injustice League. As much as it might not make for the most focused movie, having a whole team of the most iconic DC villains would just be epic. And I know there's Suicide Squad, but I'm talking as like an antagonistic force to a main hero in their movie. But I digress. And I put this one higher on the list not because it would be easy to pull off, but because if it were pulled off properly, it could be one of the more iconic efforts in the DCEU. To be honest, the only way I could see something like this really working to its fullest potential is if DC builds up their cinematic universe for another 5 years at least, and introduces each project's villain in a way that gives them all enough depth and hype that an appearance by the Injustice League would be invited, but we'll see. Finally, at number 1, we have Anti-Monitor. Probably the most powerful villain in the DC comics, Anti-Monitor has faced off against just about every DC hero you could imagine at one point or another. Anti-Monitor is also one of the oldest villains in the comics. Born at the dawn of time, Anti-Monitor is the antithesis to his brother, the Monitor. And with Monitor being the one to watch over the positive matter multiverse, Anti-Monitor exists to watch over, you guessed it, the antimatter multiverse. The only other character I can equate Anti-Monitor to would be Galactus, mainly due to his sheer size and invulnerability, but also due to the fact that neither character has been given the screen time they deserve given their influence throughout the comics. Alright, that was the list. Thanks for watching, and as always, if you think I missed anyone major, please leave a comment below and I'll do my best to answer you. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I've been your host, Ben Ball. You know the rest. Later.